Hey Longhorns, welcome back. So today we're talking about the reproductive system. We will be talking about the male and female reproductive system, and so this may be kind of a long video, but we got to talk about it. So the function of the reproductive system is to produce sex cells to create offspring. All right, so we're going to talk about the male parts first. The testes produce sperm. So the testes produces sperm and releases testosterone. It uses a, so like remember when we talked about the digestive system and your esophagus will do a thing called peristalsis where it'll like squeeze and release, squeeze and release. It uses that same movement to move sperm into the vas deferens, which we'll talk about the vas deferens in a second. The penis connects to the outside of the body and releases sperm and urine. The vas deferens connects the testes to the urethra. Remember, the urethra is from the excretory system. And then sperm is the male reproductive cell. Male. Additionally, it contains half the DNA needed to make a baby. This is what we're talking about when we talk about half your DNA comes from your parent, from your mom, and half comes from your dad. So the sperm is the male reproductive cell. It will fertilize the egg. It has half the DNA needed to make a person. The egg has half the DNA needed to make a person. So when they combine into one object called a zygote, then you have a complete human cell to make a new person. There's a little bit more that goes into it, but that's the gist. All right, moving on to the female section. The ovaries are sacs that hold and release eggs. Sacs hold and release eggs. Also produces estrogen. Additionally, the ovary will release one egg every 28 days. This is known as the menstruation cycle. Every 28 days, when the egg is not fertilized, it will then be ejected from the body along with the lining of the uterus, known as a period. The vagina connects the uterus to the outside of the body. Connects uterus to outside of body. So the vagina connects the uterus to the outside of the body. In addition, it is the area that receives the semen during coitus. Coitus is a more scientific way of saying sex. The uterus is the womb where the baby gestates. So when a sperm cell fertilizes an egg, that one cell now, because they went from 2 into 1, they're now one cell, is called a zygote. You can also refer to it as the baby at this point, or fetus. Okay? So it's where the zygote gestates or develops before birth. The egg is the female sex cell. Female. Okay, so like I said, the egg is a female reproductive cell or sex cell. It contains half the DNA needed for a baby, and after it is fertilized by the sperm, it then becomes the zygote, and that is what creates the baby. Some of y'all are wondering, like, how long does a baby remain inside the uterus before it's given birth? Generally, it is 37 weeks as a full term. That's approximately 9 months. Y'all, this quarantine got me all kinds of funny. I can't spell anymore. I lost a day. Like, it's not going well. Okay, back to babies. There's also controversy with abortions, and I'm not going to get into that, but what I will say is that in like premature babies, at 27 weeks the baby can survive without the mother. So premature babies, if they're born after 27 weeks or about the 27-week mark, they have a higher chance of surviving to being like a toddler and a baby, you know. If it's before 27 weeks, its chances are slim. It's still developing. It's still its body is just not ready to be outside of the womb. At 27 weeks, it is possible. Again, it's not always guaranteed. There's always complications that can happen. Babies are very fragile, so, you know, there are always extenuating circumstances. There's always something that could happen where it just doesn't work out. Okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to come to our office hours. I know this is generally the topic that gets the most questions. So please come into our office hours. Remember, they have changed, so now they are from 11 a.m. to noon, Monday through Friday, unless there's a holiday. All right. Male reproductive. So we have a frontal image and a side view. We're going to start with the frontal image. We have the bladder. These tubes that connect to the bladder is the ureters. This tube that goes down here is the urethra. This gland that is around it is called the prostate gland. These egg shapes on both sides are the testes. This yellow kind of looks like a worm thing that's on top of the testes is called the epididymis. It is a it is another gland. It creates more fluid so that when the sperm is traveling up, it becomes semen. It's not just sperm cells. This object here that I outlined in orange is the penis. The tube that connects the testes to the urethra is called the vas deferens. This is something that I talk about at the high school level. That is another gland organ. It's called the seminal vesicle. You don't really need to know that right now. But there it is if you're interested. Surrounding the urethra is erectile tissue. And then surrounding the testicles behind the penis is the scrotum. Over on this side view, again, is the same thing. It's just a side view instead of a frontal view. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to try to start in like the same spot. So we have the bladder here. It empties down into the, like it passes through the prostate gland, into the urethra. Now in this image, it is a little bit different because this right here is actually the pubic bone. And they took it out of this image because otherwise it'd be blocking most of the bladder. We wouldn't be able to see it. Okay? So that's really the only thing that's different. Okay, the tube that leads from the testicle to the urethra is the vas deferens. Vas deferens. We have the penis. F and E are both testes. We have the epididymis, and we have the scrotum. So that's the male reproductive system. Now we're on to the female. And again, we have a frontal view and a side view. So we're going to start with the frontal view like we did with the man. And we'll go in number order. So this part connects the outside to the inside. That is the vagina. Here, the opening in between the vagina and the uterus is called the cervix. This muscle, the whole thing, the whole outline is called the uterus, okay? However, the inside is the uterine cavity. We have the fallopian tubes. They are also known as oviducts. We're going to ignore number 6 for now. That's something that you really need to know when you get to high school, and there's not a lot of, it's not a super important part. We have the ovary. And then for number 8, it's kind of hard to see, but it's basically just the lining that's in the uterine canal or uterine cavity, and that is called the endometrium. And that endometrium is actually what gets passed through during a female's period. That's part of her menstruation cycle. So what happens is every 28 days, one little egg will come out, come through the fallopian tubes into the uterine cavity. If it is not fertilized, it does not stick to the to a wall inside the uterine cavity, and so it passes through, and so does the endometrium as part of the menstruation period, part of the menstruation cycle. All right, side view looks different, but again, the same parts are still there. Now, I will say that there is one extra part on here that we did not see in the frontal view, and that will be the anus. All right, so again, I'm going to start with the vagina. So vagina into the cervix. Connect to the uterus. This thing here that looks like the raspberry, that is the ovary. And it connects to the uterus via the oviduct, or what's known as the fallopian tubes. Fallopian tube. Now, one more thing that's not in the frontal picture is the urinary bladder. Urinary bladder. And the urethra. So urine comes in here and falls out there. All right, so that is a side view of the female reproductive part and the frontal view. Again, if you have any questions, please come into our office hours. We are more than willing to answer any questions that you might have or help explain something a little further if it's still confusing. Okay, as always, you have assignments to do. Do your best on these. Try to get them right. Not get them right. Do your best. Try to fill them out. See what you know. Because you will have to know most of this when you get into high school biology. So I'm going to talk about the male and the female in this, and I'm going to fill this out. It's not going to be a lot of conversation. Not that y'all were really answering me to begin with, but we'll pretend. Okay, so I'm going to start with A. That is the pubic bone. B is the urinary bladder. C is the prostate gland. D is the epididymis. Epididymis. Oh, I misspelled that. E and F is the testes. G is the scrotum. Urethra is H. I is the penis. J is the vas deferens. Okay, so the function of the reproductive system is to produce sex cells to create offspring. I should have put the here instead of A, but the testosterone is a chemical produced in the testicles. The vas deferens connects the testicles to the urethra. It contains fluid to create semen. The urethra connects to the outside of the body and releases the sperm and urine. The male reproductive cell is called sperm. And the testes produce the hormone testosterone. All right, on to the female. Again, pause it at this point. Do the best you can. Remember, we're not out to get you. We just want to see kind of what you know. If you need help or questions, please come into our office hours. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. We have the ovary and the oviduct, or if you called it the fallopian tube, that was right too, fallopian tube. We have the uterus, which connects to the cervix, which connects to the vagina. In front of the bladder, in front of the uterus, we have the bladder, which connects to the urethra. Here we have the, well, this is technically the anus, and so that's the rectum, but if you called it the anus, I'm not going to mark it wrong. And then this shape here, which I didn't talk about in the diagram, that is actually the pubic bone. And so here you can see that the bladder is actually kind of underneath the uterus. So as the baby grows, you've heard about pregnant women always needing to go to the bathroom. It's, oh, you cannot see half of that. Sorry. It's because the baby is pushing on the bladder. So instead of being able to expand to its normal 16-ounce capacity, it can only expand a little bit. So it can't, you can't hold it for as long or hold as much urine as you normally would be able to. All right. So that is the female labeling. Okay, function of the reproductive system is to produce sex cells to create offspring. Typo. Estrogen and progesterone are chemicals produced in the ovaries. The vagina connects the uterus to the outside of the body and receives the semen during coitus. Remember, coitus is a scientific way to say sex. The sacs that hold and release the eggs are called the ovaries. And the female reproductive cells are called eggs. All right, that's it for the reproductive system. Again, sorry this was kind of a long video, but we did cover almost 2 separate body systems because you have a male body system, which is very different from the female reproductive system. Whereas everything else is pretty much the same for both male and female. If you have any questions, concerns, just want to stop by and say hi, come into our office hours. Remember, they are 11 a.m. to noon. All right, Monday through Friday, unless there's a holiday, which you will be informed of well in advance. All righty, Longhorns, have a good day.